Hey guys, before today's episode begins, we actually have a Patreon thing. We've offered this $40 incentive to people that are doing like kind of non-related to the show plugs, and if your content's good, we'll do it. And it's kind of a way for like young creators or people that we wouldn't normally be able to do an episode with or something, fold them into the show in a certain way. And we did one before, and it was for the Bill Nye Science, for the Planetary Society. But this time, it's actually someone that has something to gain out of it, and it's actually a really, really cool project.
Mm-hmm. Nathan Klein, who's actually a fan of ours and an author, is writing a series called The Adventures of Harriet Potter, and it's essentially a series where he's taking the books of J.K. Rowling, and he's saying, what if the genders were swapped and Harriet was a female named Harriet?
And the series serves two purposes. The first being that it examines like a gender role between Harry and Harriet. So now the protagonist is a girl, and he's kind of seeing like how people in the world would respond to Harriet rather than a Harry. Mm-hmm. How would a girl approach the same stimuli and the same situations? And also, it kind of puts a twist on the close relationships he'll have. So he won't be marrying Ginny at the end. Yeah. So it's, you know.
And the secondary thing he does is he basically delves deeper into the lore of the world, which is something, I mean, I've read Harry Potter when I was younger. J.K. Rowling, there is certainly lore there, but he delves deeper into it. Yeah. He talks a little bit in book 2, he talks about how American magic politics work, because obviously it'd be different than, the British ones. And they talk about ancient wizards and stuff in the third book. It's actually really interesting, and it's not like this is just some page fanfic some teenager did.
No.
Like, books 2 and 3 are double the length of the original Harry Potter books.
We're talking 200,000 words plus.
Yeah.
And I've read some of it. I haven't had time to really get into it. And while I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan, I am thoroughly entertained thus far. Yeah. It's very cool, and I'm actually very impressed. Yeah. And if it sucked, we would not be shouting him out, and we would have declined his Patreon money. Yeah. But dude's talented, and I'm actually really excited. There's a link in the description, because we can't put it on the video. YouTube has like a weird thing about that. But please visit the description, click the link, check it out. He deserves some attention.
Yeah. For the rest of you Patreon people, the Bibles are coming. I'm sorry, we had to get our first batch out first, and the problem with that was...
A lot of our first people did get them, by the way.
Yeah. The problem was about half of them were international shipping, which if you've ever had to deal with international shipping...
It was a pain.
It's a pain, it's expensive, and you have to fill out customs forms, and we had to do all that, and it was a pain. The Canada one wasn't too bad. The like half that were from England were the bitch.
Yeah, but promise, we're buying the Bibles, and if you had formerly been there and then quit, let us know, and then we'll still get you one. Just make sure we have your information, because I have a list of the people, but some of you bailed out because you didn't get your thing, which is totally understandable, but we don't want to bone you on accident. So make sure to contact me on Twitter or email us at sciencebless@gmail.com, and with your information, and we'll make sure you get the stuff.
Yeah. And the $1 and $5 Patreons, we will shout you out all individually in the next episode. So that was all a mouthful, but to scrub your brain of anything like that, just
theme song!
Hugo and Jake, the Bible is jaded, and most of it taken, so get educated with Hugo and Jake. Pull up you and stop what you're doing, it's Bible reloaded time. They call it debated, the theists will hate it, I'm talking to taken, but it's Hugo and Jake. So on with the show then, it's not candy coated, it's the Bible reloaded with Hugo and Jake, with Hugo and Jake.
So hello everyone, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And this is the Bible Reloaded, the Atheist Bible study.
Are we doing that now? Is that a thing?
I like to do it every once in a while.
Because that's what we are.
Yeah.
I mean, we should. We should probably invest in a subtitle.
So, subtitles are expensive, I'll just say it. Anyway. If you, I'd like to bring up before we start in the last episode too. The cold open for the last episode was we talked about which Looney Tune we think is the sexiest. We picked Tweety.
Yeah.
And Jake went into vivid description as to how he would fornicate with Tweety.
Yeah.
Like half of you decided in the comments to be like, Tweety's a boy.
Yeah. Now, granted, Hugo kind of said that it was a girl, a Littleby alluded to it. Why is the line drawn at male bird rather than just fucking a bird in general?
Or a fictional cartoon bird, for that matter.
Regardless of sex, I would still fuck Tweety.
Right in the cloaca. Do birds have cloacas?
Yeah, that one does.
Okay, well, there's that. So, if you'll remember last time, Saul was still pursuing David, but David did find him in a cave relieving himself. He cut off a piece of his robe, showed it to Saul afterward, and explained, "See, I'm not trying to hurt you." Saul said to him, "Okay, I'm sorry, you're right, this was crazy, I forgive you," and they were all good.
Yeah.
Of course, in this episode, that all gets thrown out because continuity in the Bible is kind of like your mom, gets fucked all the time. So without further ado, let's begin in 1 Samuel, chapter 25, David, Nabal, and Abigail. Now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him at his home in Ramah. Then David moved down into the desert of Paran.
I love that the guy who's both 1st and 2nd Samuel named after dies, and he is relegated to a sentence. Granted, that sentence had the perfect use of a semicolon.
Yeah, by the way, halfway through 1 Samuel, Samuel dies.
That doesn't...
What are we going to call the next chapter? I don't know, call it Samuel anyway. It's kind of a continuation. Isn't the whole thing a continuation? Not really. A certain man in Moan who had property there at Carmel was very wealthy. He had 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep. She was shearing in Carmel. His name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. She was an intelligent and beautiful woman. A rare time in the Bible where a woman is noted to be intelligent. Interesting. Yeah. But her husband was surly and mean in his dealings. He was a Calebite.
Those fucking Calebites. If anyone's ever ran into a Calebite, I think surly is the number one word that I would describe them. They're always like cutting in line, and they're always really curmudgeon, and they're kind of short, and they have weird shoulders.
I know, when I'm
in
a movie theater and someone brings a baby to an R-rated film and I can't see him, I think, Calebite. Must be a Calebite. While David was in the wilderness, he heard that Nabal was shearing sheep. So he sent 10 young men and said to them, "Go up to Nabal at Carmel and greet him in my name. Say to him, 'Long life to you, good health to you and your household, and good health to all that is yours.'"
Yeah, this is a common theme in the Bible. You'll see very sexy young men given to people because they were gay bars weren't in yet.
Sexy young men are the perfect way to deliver important messages. That's why Abercrombie and Fitch does so well. You see a sexy young man shirtless outside and be like, "Oh, he might have an important message for me. I better go check it out."
He's holding a sign that says, "Save the whales," and you're like, I really want to save whales.
Verse 7. Now I hear that it is sheep shearing time when your shepherds were with us. We did not mistreat them, and the whole time they were at Carmel, nothing of theirs was missing.
Oh, thank you for not being criminals. That's really kind of you.
Yeah, so David's men go to Nabal and say, essentially, "Hey, we were around the place where all your shepherds were, and we didn't kill them or steal any of their things. Can we have stuff for that, please?" This is like a kid being like, "Hey, I didn't stab my sister all day. Can I have a cookie?"
No, bitch. You can have fucking therapy sessions, though. Because apparently stabbing your sister was on the table, which we haven't discussed.
"Ask your own servants, and they will tell you. Therefore be favorable towards my men, since we came at festival time. Please give your servants and your son David whatever you can find for them." When David's men arrived, they gave Nabal the message in David's name. Then they waited. Nabal answered David's servants, "Who is this David? Who is this son of Jesse? Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. Why should I take my bread and water and the meat I have slaughtered for my shearers and give it to men coming from who knows where?"
Good fucking question. The answer is, you shouldn't feel obligated to do so.
I mean, David gets mad at him for this, but doesn't this mean any 10 young nubile men could come and be like, "I'm with David, give me food," and they're obligated to do so even if they're not really with David?
Maybe David brands his men.
"We're nubile young men, we come from David. Let me see your butt." David's men turned around and went back. When they arrived, they reported every word. David said to his men, "Each of you, strap on a sword." So they did, and David strapped his on as well. About 400 men went up to David, while 200 stayed with their supplies. So David is saying, "What? They didn't do what I wanted them to, even though they were under no obligation to? Let's kill them." And this ties into the whole hospitality thing, which is huge in the Old Testament and in Hebrew culture. One of the servants told Abigail, Nabal's wife, "David sent messengers from the wilderness to give your master his greetings, but he hurled insults at them. Yet these men were very good to us. They did not mistreat us, and the whole time we were out there in the fields near them, nothing was missing." This servant has Stockholm syndrome. They're so mistreated that when they're not hurt and they're not being given negative reinforcement, they're super excited. They're like, "They didn't steal any of our stuff!" Tied into the Harry Potter thing again, it's like Dobby being really excited when he's offered a chair. Like, "No, Dobby, that's just normal.
And then he hands him a sock, and he's like, "You're a free elf now."
I'm a free elf. I'm gonna die in the last book.
And then I'm gonna laugh in the movie theater when that happens to something completely unrelated, and people are gonna think I'm a piece of shit. True story.
You are a piece of shit.
I am, but I wouldn't have laughed at Dobby's death. It was horrifying.
We're laughing at it now.
Well, yeah, but I've had time to heal.
Verse 16. Night and day they were a wall around us the whole time we were herding our sheep near them. Now think it over, see what you can do, because disaster is hanging over our master and this whole household. He is such a wicked man that no one can talk to him. And they're saying here that not only did David and his men not do bad things, they actually protected them maybe from marauders or wolves, something. But really, shouldn't that be what David's bringing up? Like, why is he bringing up, I didn't murder you? He should be like, hey, we helped protect you. Yeah. And even under that circumstance, this guy is under no obligation to do anything.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing again, and we understand that. But at the same time, like, expecting something from other people for non-violence is bullshit.
Yeah, like, remember when Martin Luther King was like, I'm not going to hurt you. Can I have some money? No, didn't do that. He was just like, I'm not going to hurt you. Because it's the right thing to do. I'm Martin Luther.
Ooh.
That was a dark joke.
That was a.
Which is the worst joke, Dobby dying or Martin Luther King shooting joke?
Oh.
Let the fans decide! Verse 18. Abigail acted quickly. She took 200 loaves of bread, which were just lying around the house, like, you know, everyone has. 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, 5 sahs of roasted grain, 100 cakes of raisins, and 200 cakes of pressed figs, and loaded them onto the donkeys.
Okay, what are dressed sheep?
They're like really classy sheep. Like
they're pleated
wearing
khakis and like bow ties?
Even more so than that. They have coat tails and monocles.
Sheep monocles.
Like, they don't jump over fences to help you sleep. They hire lesser animals to do that for them. Then she told her servants, go ahead, I'll follow you. But she did not tell her husband Nabal. So now Abigail is taking the things that David wanted and taking them to him in order to satisfy him because she thinks he deserves it. Also, probably she's a little afraid of his retribution because she has heard of David. She knows how violent he can get when pushed to his limits.
Or maybe she's just thirsty.
Maybe.
She got that thirst, that vag thirst.
As she came riding her donkey into the mountain ravine, there was David and his men descending towards her, and she met them. David had just said, it's been useless, all my watching over this fellow's property in the wilderness so that nothing of his was missing. He has paid me back evil for good. See, David, if I'm going to talk to you, Amanda, fictional character, when you do something nice for someone for free and you just do it of your own volition...
That's actually nice.
It's a nice thing. It's rude to expect something in return. I mean, you can kind of hope, like, oh, I'll return someone's dog for them and maybe I'll get a reward. But when you don't get the reward, doing the nice thing is supposed to be the reward. Just being a nice person.
Yeah.
What the fuck else were you doing in the desert anyway?
That's kind of like Jesus' thing, isn't it?
Kinda.
Like, hey, just be nice to people.
Just be nice to people.
Why are we going to be nice to them? Are they going to give us things?
No,
like their wives?
Just do it.
Well, that doesn't...
Just meek and stuff. Meek people will inherit the earth. Will that make you shut up?
It's only because they don't have access to proper reproductive rights.
Bitch, I'm Jesus.
Socioeconomic joke for the win.
Verse 22. May God deal with David, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave alive one male of all who belong to him. Wow. And this is actually interesting because this is worded slightly differently in different translations. In this one it says, if I leave alive one male of the household. But in earlier versions, I believe like the King James, because we read from the NIV as we've said before, it's worded as, if I leave alive one person who pisseth against the wall.
Yeah.
And that's a euphemism that could mean, one, just males. It's referring to males, as it says here. But it can also be a slur as intended to mean like a dog. It'd be sort of like the male version of calling someone a bitch, if that makes sense.
Pretty much. It's kind of saying like that you're indecent and you expose yourself in public. I'm pretty sure it's the Talmud. I could be wrong. But they even go into like specifically how you can pee on different types of walls. Like you can pee on a rock wall, but not like a stucco wall or one that's made with brick and mud because it'll deteriorate it. And it's so weird that and they're like, you have to step back a foot.
Yeah.
And it's basically just a really unkind kind of asshole guy equivalent to a bitch.
So if you're ever reading this from an older version, that's what that means basically. You're welcome. When Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and bowed down before David with her face to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "Pardon your servant, my lord, and let me speak to you. Hear what your servant has to say. Please pay no attention, my lord, to the wicked man Nabal. He is just like his name. His name means fool, and folly goes with him. And as for me, your servant, I did not see the men my lord sent. And now, my lord, as surely as the Lord your God lives and you live, since the Lord has kept you from bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hands, may your enemies and all those who are intent on harming my lord be like Nabal. And let this gift which your servant has brought to my lord be given to the men who follow you."
What a long monologue for
I know,
some lady
right?
that
It's
I
like,
don't care about.
Here's the stuff. "Please forgive your servant's presumption. The Lord your God will certainly make a lasting dynasty for my lord, because you fight the Lord's battles and no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you live. Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life, and the life of my lord will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God. But the lives of your enemies will be hurled away as from the pocket of a sling." So she's talking about the people who are pursuing David. And interesting, referring to Saul, even though in the last episode and in the last chapter, Saul forgave David completely.
But yeah, and all of Saul's stuff, basically from his inception in the book, is continually fucked. It's just so confusing. His death is confusing. The stuff about David and him knowing him or not knowing him is confusing. Even the stuff about his depression and the harp stuff is confusing. Yeah. So Saul is one of those very, very popular Bible characters that was so written about, probably because of popular lore, that they smash these books together and it just does not work in continuity.
Yeah. So we'll get into a lot more of that in the next episode, where we talk about the second time David spares Saul's life, and they reconcile for the second time, but we'll talk more about that then. But it's just important to note here, they're already going back on what they said in the previous chapter about them reconciling. Verse 30, "When the Lord has fulfilled for my lord every good thing he promised concerning him, and he has appointed him ruler over Israel, my lord will not have on his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed or having avenged himself. And when the Lord your God has brought my lord success, remember your servant." So she's ass-kissing a little bit. She's like, "Oh, everything's gonna be fine, man, and when that happens, I hope you'll remember me."
This is probably the longest amount of text we've gotten from a single woman consecutively in the whole Bible, though.
I think that's actually probably true.
It's kind of interesting. I don't know. And she's not even really that important. She just
ass-kisses David.
Yeah.
The longest monologue from a woman yet in the Bible, and it's about praising a man.
And we read a book named Ruth.
Yeah. David said to Abigail, "Praise be the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me. May you be blessed for your good judgment and for keeping me from bloodshed this day and from avenging myself with my own hands. Otherwise, as sure as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, who has kept me from harming you, if you had not come quickly to meet me, not one male belonging to Nabal would have been left alive by daybreak." So David's saying to her, "Ooh, good thing you showed up. I would have murdered every male you know. Your whole world would have been just destroyed."
You don't know what a trigger is, but I get kind of trigger happy, kind of sword happy, like stabby. I get real stabby when I get irritated.
I get awful hilt happy.
Yeah, I just, and especially when I don't have anything to eat. I hate raisins. I didn't tell you. Hate them. Like dates, though. Dates are fine.
And it's most grapes in the Middle East. Raisins by the time I get to them.
Yeah,
it's a heat thing.
It's really disappointing. So I get stabby.
Then David accepted from her what she had brought him and said, "Go home in peace, for I have heard your words and granted your request." Gee, thanks, David. You're so nice. Thanks for not murdering, asshole. When Abigail went to Nabal, he was in his house holding a banquet like that of a king. I guess we're supposed to think he's an asshole because of that.
Yeah,
but
because he had stuff to give, but didn't give it just because he didn't want to. But it shows that he actually does have an excess, and it wasn't because he was unable.
But you know what the Beastie Boys say? You gotta fight.
For your right.
To party.
To partay.
He fought for that right.
He did.
I mean, he's gonna die, but he did fight for it.
Totally.
He was in high spirits and very drunk. She told him nothing at all until daybreak. Then in the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him all these things and his heart failed him and became like a stone. so she's like, "Hey, I gave David some food that was lying around, which you clearly didn't miss anyway."
And he's like, "What?" And then he had a heart attack and went into a coma.
Which is just lovely. And about 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal and died. It was an unrelated incident. He was struck by lightning. Then David sent word to Abigail, asking her to become his wife. His servant went to Carmel and said to Abigail, "David has sent us to take you to become his wife."
That's the least romantic sing-o-gram I've ever heard.
"Yo, bitch, we here to take you."
Okay, who is it?
"David."
Well, I guess he's kind of hot.
Dicking.
For a dicking?
Dicking.
He's just gonna dick me?
Dick.
Yes?
Ing.
Well.
She bowed down with her face to the ground, because that's how bowing works, and said, I am your servant and am ready to serve you and wash the feet of my lord's servants.
That is the fucking sexiest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Gonna wash your feet.
I just want to serve you.
Gonna get that old bowl from under the cupboard that we don't use for food anymore. Gonna soak your feet in it.
Yeah.
Get a pumice stone.
Yeah, fucking rub my corns, bitch.
Abigail quickly got on a donkey, and attended by her 5 female servants, who David most certainly banged at one point or another, went with David's messengers and became his wife. David had also married Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they were both his wives.
Well, that must suck to be the one that was relegated to the kind of a sentence.
I know. So yeah, he has 2 wives now, but remember, he did have a wife before. However, verse 44, but Saul had given his daughter, Michal, David's wife, to Paltiel, son of Laish, who was from Galium. So David's first wife not in the picture anymore. Saul took her back, which I guess you can do when you're king.
I don't know how ancient marriage works.
So now David's down to only 2 wives. That poor man.
That must suck. And 5 servant girls at least.
Yeah.
So he's got himself a little sex dungeon.
A little bit. A roving sex dungeon, though. It's more like a sex tent.
Like sex nomads.
Yeah.
That should be our new band name.
Sex Nomads. I miss Sex Abacus.
I miss it too.
Let's bring Sex Abacus back.
Counting on your fingers and hoes.
Ugh, classic TBR. None of this TNG shit. Thanks everyone for watching. Next time we're going to get into some of the big continuity errors with Saul. I'm sure we will again in the future because there's more of it.
It just doesn't end until he's finally gone.
Yeah.
For the 4th time.
But we'll get into that next time if you want. You can follow us on Twitter at Bible Reloaded.
You can follow Hugo over there at Hugo Reloaded.
If you wanted, you can donate to our Patreon. As we said, the Bibles for the $12 and $15 ones, those are starting to go out more and more.
Yep, so those will actually be coming fast. We're going to buy them in huge bulk because we finally are in a position where we can afford it.
Yeah,
and it's been a big thing. And remember, if you were one of those people, make sure to get to me and get your information to me. I don't want to fuck you on accident.
Yeah.
You guys have been helping us out a lot. It was unintentional. We're sorry.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, and that's going to come out real soon. And again, we're going to give you those shout outs because we have had a big list, but it fluctuated a lot. So we were just going to do a bunch at once. And it's going to be fun.
Yeah. So, until next time, I'm Hugo.
And I'm Jake.
And this has been The Bible Reloaded. Next week, we try and recruit Phil Collins for our new supergroup, Sex Genesis.